Beneath the glittering lights of Hollywood's golden age, behind the red carpets and studio spotlights, there were love stories, so forbidden they could never be printed in the gossip columns. They were whispered in dressing rooms, hidden in coded letters, and lived out in stolen glances on closed film sets. These weren't the fairy tales the studios wanted you to believe. These were romances, tangled in power, secrecy, and scandal. Affairs that defied the rigid morality clauses of the time, threatened the careers of some of the world's most famous stars, and left behind a trail of heartbreak, rumors, and unanswered questions. Tonight, we open the locked door to Hollywood's most dangerous affairs. And once you step inside, you might never see your favorite stars the same way again. Hollywood in the early to mid-20th century was more than a dream factory. It was a fortress of image control. Studio heads dictated not only the roles their stars played on screen, but the lives they were allowed to live off it. Contracts came with morality clauses, gossip columnists were paid to protect reputations, and entire publicity departments were devoted to manufacturing illusions. But behind this carefully polished facade, some of the industry's brightest icons lived double lives, navigating affairs that could have ended their careers or worse, destroyed their personal safety. In this countdown, we'll reveal 13 of the most forbidden love stories in Hollywood history. From secret same-sex romances to dangerous liaisons with political figures, these are the affairs that the cameras could never capture, but history refuses to forget. Marlene Dietrich was the ultimate screen siren Berlin-born, with a voice like smoke and a gaze that could cut through the thickest Hollywood facade. By the 1932nd, she was an international star, draped in furs and diamonds, celebrated for her androgynous style and fearless sexuality on screen. But what the public didn't know was that her private life was just as daring as her roles. The turning point came when Dietrich crossed paths with Mercedes de Aosta, a Cuban-American poet and playwright who was already infamous for her relationships with Greta Garbo, Eva Le Gallienne, and other celebrated women of the era. De Aosta was bold, intellectual, and unapologetically open about her attraction to women, a dangerous stance in a time when such relationships were considered career suicide. Their affair unfolded in an atmosphere of coded language and veiled gestures. Letters were written in poetic metaphors, meetings arranged in secluded hotel rooms, and public interactions disguised as casual acquaintanceship. Mercedes often spoke of Marlene's magnetic presence, once writing in her diary that her eyes alone could intoxicate an entire room. Behind closed doors, their connection was electric, but in public, it was a high-wire act of discretion. The drama was heightened by Mercedes' reputation as the most dangerous woman in Hollywood, a title given by gossip mongers who claimed she could steal the affections of any woman she set her sights on. Marlene, ever the master of reinvention, maintained her image as a woman desired by all, carefully sidestepping questions about her relationships. Yet whispers persisted on set, in social circles, and in the back rooms of smoky nightclubs. Eventually, the relationship cooled, partly due to Marlene's unwillingness to risk her career by being too closely linked to de Acosta's scandalous public persona. But their connection never fully dissolved. Years later, Mercedes would still speak of Marlene with a mixture of longing and admiration. In the end, theirs was a romance that thrived in the shadows, passionate, intellectual, and dangerous. As one contemporary observer noted, Marlene didn't just play with fire, she chose to dance in it. Vivien Leigh was the dazzling English rose who would forever be remembered as Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind. Laurence Olivier was the brooding Shakespearean actor whose talent commanded both the stage and screen. When they met in 1935, both were married. Vivien to barrister Herbert Lee Holman, and Olivier to actress Jill Esmond. Yet from their first meeting, there was a spark that neither could ignore. The turning point came during their work together on the 1937 film Fire Over England. Their on-screen chemistry mirrored a growing off-screen passion, one that became increasingly difficult to hide. Friends whispered about long lunches, stolen rehearsals, and the way Olivier's eyes followed Vivien across a room. In a conservative British society that valued propriety above all else, this affair was not just scandalous, it was dangerous. The drama deepened when their romance became an open secret in the London theater world. Olivier's wife, Jill, quietly endured the humiliation, while Vivien's husband refused to grant her a divorce. Yet the lovers pressed on, traveling together under assumed names, exchanging letters full of desperate longing. Vivien once wrote, "No matter where you are, I am yours, utterly and completely." By 1940, after years of public denial and private passion, both finally divorced their spouses and married each other in a small, discreet ceremony in California. For a time, they were Britain's golden couple, beautiful, talented, and deeply in love. But their story did not end in bliss. Vivien's struggles with bipolar disorder and Olivier's infidelities chipped away at the foundation of their marriage. Public appearances became strained, and behind closed doors, their fights were legendary. They divorced in 1960, ending a union that had begun in such fierce defiance of convention. Yet even after their split, Olivier spoke of Vivien with a tenderness that suggested their love had never truly died. Their relationship remains one of the most talked about romances in British acting history, a reminder that passion can burn brightly, but not always forever. Spencer Tracy was the quintessential American leading man, rugged, charismatic, and impossibly private. Katharine Hepburn was Hollywood royalty, fiercely independent, sharp-tongued, and unapologetically herself. When they met on the set of Woman of the Year in 1941, sparks flew instantly. Hepburn would later recall their first meeting with a teasing, "I'm afraid I might be too tall for you," to which Tracy replied with a sly smile. The turning point was immediate. What began as a working relationship became a deep, emotional connection, even though Tracy was a married man. His Catholic faith made divorce unthinkable. And yet, for the next 26 years, he and Hepburn would live a love story that Hollywood's gossip columns could never openly print. They attended premieres separately, stayed in different hotel rooms while traveling, and cultivated an elaborate choreography to avoid public exposure. The drama was in the details. Hepburn would quietly move into a cottage next to Tracy's home when his health began to fail, and she devoted herself to caring for him, even if it meant stepping away from her career. Friends and co-stars were complicit in the secrecy, with some claiming that studio executives actively helped cover up their relationship to protect Tracy's image as a family man. Through it all, there was an unspoken understanding between them. Hepburn never demanded marriage, and Tracy never left his wife. Their bond was sustained by mutual respect, shared humor, and an unwavering emotional intimacy that transcended societal norms. When Tracy died in 1967, Hepburn was at his side, though she skipped the funeral out of respect for his family. In her memoir, Hepburn would later write of Tracy, "He was the greatest actor I ever knew, and the love of my life. It was a romance lived in the shadows, but for those who knew them, it shone brighter than any Hollywood spotlight." Dorothy Dandridge was a trailblazer, the first African-American woman nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress, celebrated for her beauty, poise, and talent in an era when Hollywood offered few opportunities for Black performers. Otto Preminger was the Austrian-born director known for pushing boundaries on screen and off. When the two met while working on the 1954 musical Carmen Jones, the attraction was immediate. The turning point came during production, when Preminger's attention to Dorothy extended far beyond professional interest. They began a passionate affair, one made infinitely more complicated by the racial climate of 1952nd America. An interracial relationship, particularly one between a powerful white director and a Black actress, was not just controversial, it could end a career in a heartbeat. The drama surrounding their romance was fueled by Hollywood's double standards. While Preminger could weather the whispers, Dorothy bore the brunt of the judgment. Friends warned her that being associated with Preminger might harm her career, especially since he was still married. Yet, Dorothy was drawn to his intellect, his confidence, and his willingness to treat her as an equal in a world that so often refused to. But as with so many Hollywood affairs, reality intruded. Preminger was unwilling to leave his wife, and he reportedly discouraged Dorothy from taking roles he deemed beneath her advice that, in hindsight, limited her professional options. The relationship dragged on in secrecy for years, ultimately leaving Dorothy heartbroken when Preminger moved on without public acknowledgement of their time together. For Dorothy, the affair was both intoxicating and destructive, a reminder of how love, power, and prejudice could collide in mid-century Hollywood. As one confidante later said, Dorothy wanted love, but Hollywood only gave her conditions. Marilyn Monroe was Hollywood's ultimate bombshell, her platinum hair, sultry voice, and playful charm, making her the most desired woman in the world. John F. Kennedy was America's charismatic young president, adored for his wit, glamour, and promise of a new era. Their worlds collided in the early 1962nd, and what began as a fleeting attraction soon became one of the most enduring rumors in American pop culture. The turning point came in May 1962 at Madison Square Garden, when Marilyn took the stage to sing her now legendary Happy Birthday, Mr. President. Dressed in a skin-tight, rhinestone-covered gown, her performance dripped with intimacy, igniting speculation that there was far more between them than political formality. Behind the scenes, whispers had already linked them private parties at the Kennedy family's homes, phone calls late at night, and sightings that the press, at the time, dared not print outright. The drama intensified because of the stakes. JFK was married to Jacqueline Kennedy. His political career was at its peak, and America was in the midst of Cold War tensions. For Marilyn, involvement with the president was intoxicating, but it also placed her in a dangerous spotlight. Friends recalled her speaking openly about her affection for him, while others claimed she believed their relationship could be something lasting an illusion that was never meant to survive in the harsh world of politics. The rumored affair cooled quickly, with some accounts suggesting JFK's inner circle moved to create distance between them to avoid scandal. Yet the connection remained etched in history, especially after Marilyn's untimely death just months later in August 1962. Theories linking her demise to her alleged ties with the Kennedy family have persisted for decades, ensuring that the whispers never truly fade. In the end, their relationship, whether brief fling or deeper bond, stands as one of the most tantalizing what-ifs in American history, a collision of two icons whose time together could only exist in shadows. Jean Harlow was the original blonde bombshell of the 1932nd, her platinum hair and magnetic screen presence, making her a sensation during Hollywood's pre-code era. She embodied allure, yet her personal life was a storm of heartbreak, scandal, and whispered affairs. Among the most talked about were her deep connection to actor William Powell and persistent rumors surrounding her chemistry with Clark Gable. The turning point with Powell came in the mid-1932nd, after they met on the MGM lot. Powell, sophisticated and debonair, was drawn to Jean's wit and vulnerability beneath her glamorous exterior. Their relationship offered her stability during a period when she was reeling from the mysterious death of her second husband, Paul Byrne, a tragedy shrouded in controversy. Powell became her anchor, accompanying her to industry events and quietly supporting her through personal turmoil. The drama deepened when studio gossip began linking Harlow to her frequent co-star, Clark Gable. Their on-screen chemistry in films like Red Dust and Hold Your Man was electric, and rumors swirled that the heat extended beyond the cameras. Both stars denied any romantic involvement, but MGM executives were more than happy to let the speculation boost box office sales. With Powell, Jean found genuine companionship, but their romance faced its own obstacles, most notably Powell's reluctance to remarry after a divorce and Jean's declining health. By 1937, Harlow's physical condition had worsened due to kidney disease, though few outside her inner circle knew the extent. Powell stayed by her side, visiting her in the hospital and offering comfort in her final days. Jean Harlow died at just 26, leaving behind an unfinished love story with Powell and unanswered questions about her rumored bond with Gable. For many, she remained the woman who lit up the screen and left too soon her romances as intoxicating and tragic as her short, dazzling life. Bette Davis was not just a star, she was a force of nature. Known for her sharp tongue, intense performances, and refusal to play by anyone's rules, she became one of Hollywood's most respected and feared actresses. But behind her fierce independence was a battle not with a lover, but with an entire system. The iron grip of Warner Brothers and the studio control that sought to dictate every aspect of her career and personal life. The turning point came in the mid-1932nd, when Davis, frustrated by what she saw as mediocre scripts, walked out on her Warner Brothers contract and fled to England in search of better roles. The studio fought back hard, suing her in British court. She lost the case, but the headlines painted her as a rebel, a woman willing to challenge the male-dominated power structure of Hollywood. The drama here was less about clandestine romance and more about the push and pull between Betty's ambition and the studio's control over her image. Warner Brothers dictated what roles she could play, when she could work, and even how she could appear in public. Rumors swirled that her personal relationships, both romantic and platonic, were scrutinized by the studio, with publicists crafting or suppressing stories to keep her in line with their preferred narrative. In defying the studio, Davis carved out some of her greatest performances, from Jezebel to All About Eve. Yet the fight came at a cost-strained relationships with executives, long periods without work, and a reputation as difficult. Still, she never wavered, famously declaring, "I will not be a puppet for anyone." Her lifelong affair with rebellion against studio control reshaped the industry, paving the way for future actors to negotiate for creative freedom. It was a romance of a different kind, between an artist and her relentless pursuit of autonomy, marked by passion, defiance, and the refusal to settle for anything less than greatness. Tallulah Bankhead was one of the most flamboyant personalities of the 20th century, an actress with a husky voice, razor-sharp wit, and an appetite for life that defied every convention. She was notorious for her uninhibited love affairs, openly pursuing both men and women in an era when such candor could end a career. But beneath the champagne-soaked parties and outrageous one-liners lay a much darker, more personal chapter. Her repeated struggles with pregnancy and abortion in a Hollywood that forced women to keep such matters hidden at all costs. The turning point came in the 1932nd, when Tallulah's free-spirited lifestyle collided with the rigid morality clauses of the studios. Multiple affairs led to several pregnancies, each of which she terminated sometimes out of fear for her career, other times due to health concerns. In a time when abortion was both illegal and socially condemned, these procedures were carried out in secrecy, often in dangerous conditions. The drama was intensified by Tallulah's own candor. Unlike other stars who cloaked such events in euphemisms, she reportedly spoke openly in private circles about her abortions, once quipping half in jest, half in pain about the number she'd undergone. Her boldness shocked even the most jaded Hollywood insiders, but it also underscored the double standard women faced. Male stars could indulge in scandal with little consequence, while female stars risked everything for even the perception of impropriety. These experiences left a deep mark on Tallulah, shaping her famously hedonistic yet guarded persona. Though she never had children, she cultivated a wide circle of godchildren and was fiercely protective of the younger women she mentored, warning them about the dangers of the industry's hypocrisy. In the end, Tallulah Bankhead's story was one of survival in a system that demanded perfection but offered no mercy. She once said, "If I had to live my life again, I'd make all the same mistakes, only sooner." It was the kind of line only Tallulah could deliver, laced with bravado, but rooted in a lifetime of battles fought in the shadows. Scotty Bowers wasn't a movie star. He didn't appear on marquees or grace the covers of fan magazines. Yet, behind the closed doors of Hollywood's golden age, he became one of its most talked about and most discreet figures. A former Marine turned gas station attendant in 1942nd Los Angeles, Bowers operated in the shadows, arranging intimate encounters for some of the industry's most famous names. His little black book was never written down, but his memory was legendary. The turning point came when Scotty, stationed at a service station on Hollywood Boulevard, was propositioned by actor Walter Pidgeon. That chance meeting opened the floodgates. Word spread quietly through the tight-knit elite that Bowers could be trusted to provide companionship without judgment, whether one's taste aligned with the moral codes of the day or not. His clientele included actors, directors, and even political figures, men and women alike, many of whom had to hide their sexuality to preserve their careers. The drama wasn't in public scandals. Bowers never outed his clients while they were alive, but in the sheer scale of the hidden world he catered to. While the studios worked tirelessly to maintain the wholesome images of their stars, Scotty was facilitating a parallel Hollywood, one where passion could be explored away from flashing cameras and gossip columnists. For decades, he kept his secrets. It wasn't until the publication of his 2012 memoir Full Service and the subsequent documentary that the full scope of his underground network became public knowledge. Even then, he insisted his work was about helping people live as they truly were, without shame. Scotty Bowers' story is less a tale of romance than of quiet rebellion against Hollywood's suffocating facade. He was the invisible thread connecting some of the most famous and most secret love stories of the 20th century, a reminder that desire has always found a way, even in the most carefully controlled environments. Spencer Tracy's decades-long relationship with Katharine Hepburn may be the most famous chapter of his romantic life, but it was far from his only connection with the women he worked alongside. Tracy's charm, dry wit, and magnetic screen presence made him not only a favorite with audiences, but also with many of his leading ladies, some of whom found themselves drawn to him in ways that went beyond the script. The turning point in this pattern emerged during his early years at MGM. Tracy, while maintaining a public image as a devoted family man, was quietly known among insiders for forming intense, if often short-lived, bonds with his female co-stars. These connections were rarely publicized, but on set, they were hard to miss private conversations between takes, lingering glances during rehearsals, and a knack for making his scene partners feel as though they were the only person in the room. The drama was in the secrecy and the stakes. Tracy's Catholic faith and refusal to divorce meant that any romantic involvement had to be kept under wraps, especially when it involved married or high-profile actresses. Rumors linked him at various points to stars like Ingrid Bergman, Gene Tierney, and even Loretta Young, though few of these whispers ever reached the public during his lifetime. The studios had a vested interest in keeping Tracy's personal life out of the headlines, fearing that scandal could tarnish one of their most bankable stars. These relationships, whether fleeting or enduring, spoke to a man who found deep connection through his work. For Tracy, acting wasn't just a craft, it was an emotional exchange, and sometimes that exchange spilled over into real life. But unlike the public, neatly packaged romances crafted by studio press departments. These were private, unrecorded stories, preserved only in the memories of those involved. In the end, Spencer Tracy's affair with his leading ladies was an extension of his artistry, complex, passionate, and bound by the unspoken rules of an era that demanded discretion above all else. They were, like so much of classic Hollywood's truth, moments that lived off-camera, real, but invisible to the world. Clark Gable was the king of Hollywood, a towering figure whose rugged masculinity made him the dream of countless audiences, most famously as Rhett Butler in Gone with the Wind. Carole Lombard, by contrast, was the queen of screwball comedy, known for her quick wit, sparkling personality, and ability to light up any room she entered. Together, they seemed destined to be a Hollywood power couple, but their story began under the shadow of secrecy. The turning point came in the mid-1932nd, when Gable, still married to wealthy socialite Rhea Langham, met Lombard at a party. The chemistry between them was undeniable. Soon, rumors swirled that Gable and Lombard were meeting in hotel rooms, sneaking off to hunting trips, and exchanging playful letters laced with innuendo. But divorce was messy, and MGM, ever mindful of Gable's image as the ultimate leading man, pressured him to keep the affair quiet. The drama escalated as the affair became Hollywood's worst-kept secret. Lombard was fiercely independent and refreshingly candid, often making jokes in public that hinted at their romance. Gable, more private, struggled with balancing his studio obligations and his love for Carole. Finally, in 1939, after years of whispers, Gable obtained his divorce and married Lombard in a small, intimate ceremony. For a brief moment, it seemed like the fairy tale had come true. But tragedy struck just 3 years later. In January 1942, Lombard was returning from a war bond rally when her plane crashed in Nevada, killing her instantly. The loss devastated Gable. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces shortly after, perhaps seeking both distraction and redemption. Those who knew him said he never fully recovered from Carole's death, carrying her memory like a wound for the rest of his life. As one Hollywood columnist later wrote, Gable was the king, but with Carole, he was simply a man in love. And when she died, a part of him went with her. Ingrid Bergman was the luminous star of Casablanca and one of the most beloved actresses in the world. With her natural beauty and graceful presence, she embodied Hollywood elegance during the 1942nd. Roberto Rossellini, meanwhile, was a groundbreaking Italian director, praised for his raw neo-realist films that captured life in post-war Europe. Their meeting would ignite not only a romance, but one of the most scandalous love stories in Hollywood history. The turning point came in 1948, when Bergman, already married to Dr. Peter Lindstrom and a mother to young Pia, wrote Rossellini a bold letter. She admired his work and expressed a desire to collaborate. When she traveled to Italy to star in his film Stromboli, art quickly blurred into life. Their working relationship transformed into a passionate affair, one that shocked the world when Ingrid became pregnant with Rossellini's child. The drama exploded across international headlines. In America, the public was scandalized that the wholesome star they adored had left her husband and child for a foreign director. The reaction was so fierce that Bergman was denounced on the floor of the U.S. Senate, with one senator calling her a powerful influence for evil. Hollywood, under pressure, effectively blacklisted her, and for years, she was unwelcome on American screens. Despite the outrage, Bergman and Rossellini married in 1950 and went on to have 3 children together, including future actress Isabella Rossellini. But the relationship that began in fire eventually cooled. By 1957, their marriage dissolved amid rumors of infidelity and creative clashes. Yet even after the scandal, Bergman made a triumphant return to Hollywood, winning an Oscar for Anastasia in 1956. Her romance with Rossellini remains one of the most infamous examples of how personal choices could collide with public morality in Hollywood's golden age. As Bergman herself once reflected, "I've gone from saint to whore and back to saint again, all in one lifetime." Charlie Chaplin was already a legend when this story began, the world's most famous comedian, the genius behind The Tramp, and a man in his 50s whose personal life was as controversial as his films were beloved. Oona O'Neill, by contrast, was barely 18, the beautiful daughter of Nobel Prize-winning playwright Eugene O'Neill, and a debutante moving in New York's elite circles. When their paths crossed in 1942, it was a meeting that would scandalize society. The turning point came when Oona, aspiring to an acting career, was introduced to Chaplin in Hollywood. Despite the staggering 36-year age gap, sparks flew. Oona was captivated by Chaplin's brilliance and charm, while he found in her a youthful spirit and gentleness that tempered his restless energy. Their relationship quickly turned serious, and by 1943, they married in a quiet ceremony, shocking both Hollywood and high society. The drama erupted instantly. The press had a field day with the age difference, portraying Chaplin as predatory and Oona as naive. Her father, Eugene O'Neill, was so outraged that he disowned her, refusing all contact for the rest of his life. Hollywood insiders whispered that the marriage would never last, predicting it was nothing more than a passing infatuation. But against all odds, the union endured. While Chaplin faced political persecution and was eventually exiled from the United States during the McCarthy era, Oona stood steadfastly by his side. She gave up acting to devote herself to him and their growing family. They had 8 children together, including actress Geraldine Chaplin. Their marriage lasted until Chaplin's death in 1977, a remarkable 34 years. What began as a scandal ridiculed by the world evolved into one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories. As their daughter later said, "They laughed at my parents when they married, but in the end, they had the last laugh because theirs was the real thing." From shadowed hotel rooms to whispered promises on closed sets, these 13 stories reveal a truth. Hollywood has always tried to hide that behind the glamour, the gowns, and the glittering premieres, real human hearts were at stake. These were affairs born of passion, defiance, and sometimes desperation, shaped by an industry that demanded perfection while punishing imperfection. Some of these romances ended in heartbreak, others in quiet devotion, but all of them left an imprint not only on the people involved, but on the mythology of Hollywood itself. The Golden Age was never just about the movies. It was about the lives lived between the takes, the longing that could never be written into a script, and the secrets carried to the grave. And now, decades later, these whispers still have the power to fascinate, reminding us that even the brightest stars cast shadows. Which of these forbidden romances surprised you the most? And do you think the industry has truly changed, or are there still secrets waiting to be uncovered? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from behind Hollywood's closed doors. What made these stories possible wasn't just passion, it was the unspoken social contracts of their time. The Hollywood studio system operated like a kingdom, with moguls acting as kings and stars as both jewels and prisoners. Morality clauses, gossip column control, and even backroom deals with law enforcement ensured that some secrets were protected, while others were buried so deep they'd only resurface decades later. Many of the romances you've just heard about were pieced together from forgotten letters, private diaries, and memoirs published long after the key players were gone. These fragments, some confirmed, others forever speculative, remind us how much history depends on who's telling it and when they feel safe enough to speak. For the visuals, imagine AI-rendered scenes. A black and white 1,942nd hotel hallway, shadows stretching across the carpet as 2 figures pass without touching. A dressing room mirror reflecting both a star's face and the outline of another person just outside the frame. An old typewriter with a half-finished love letter, the ink slightly smudged, as if the writer left in a hurry. These aren't just details, they're pieces of a puzzle that Hollywood never wanted solved. And maybe that's why we still lean in when someone whispers, "I heard a story about,"